On today's show at the Cottage with ChefD, we're going to be grilling some steaks. We're going to be teaching you what steak you should use to marinate, what steak not to marinate. We're also going to be making potato Anna, roasted potatoes, ChefD jus, which is really simple and easy that can be at the Cottage. Won't you join me? So here we are at the Cottage, and what better way to invite friends over or have family over than offer some steaks for dinner. And I brought my good friend, Chef Steve Griffin from, now you do some teaching, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And thank you again for having me today.
Oh no, this is going to be great. So again, teaching young people, high school age, right? Grades 9 and 10, right?
10, 11, and 12.
Okay, perfect. So now do you ever get into this part of...
I do a unit with one of my grades on beef. Actually, a lot of the meats and just some of the cuts and stuff like that, and which cuts to choose, the proper cut to pick for the type of cooking style that you're going to be doing.
Exactly. So our good friends at NutriFarms have given us a whole bunch of steaks. I'm pretty excited here. So we're going to go from my left and then over to right. Okay.
Yep.
So we're starting off with everybody's New York strip loin. You know, and these are all grass finished. So again, the fat's going to be wider than if you ever see like a corn finished. They do grass raised beef and finish it with a little bit of corn and a cream or mash just the last week.
All right.
And then again, lots of flavor, some sweetness, and it's when you have grass raised beef, it tends to be easier to digest. And and then we have our beef tenderloin, which is my favorite cut. I just love it. I just love it. And then we have ribeye. Now, again, you're going to notice again with the grass raised is that they don't have the big fat cap normally that a corn raised or another raised would be. So these are a little bit smaller, and you can just see there's a nice little fat in it, but not too crazy. And then, of course, the top sirloin. Now, these three here, I love just putting a little bit of salt and pepper on. I know that a lot of people out there might put some, Montreal steak spice or that. Please don't. Please don't. A little bit of salt and pepper, and then you get to taste all that great beef flavor, right?
If the beef has great flavor, you don't want to mask it with a lot of that. Especially some of those spices have a lot of salt in them.
Exactly.
And that's not good for you. And again, it's masking that nice natural flavor of the meat.
And then of course we have our top sirloin, which is right here. And this is a great marinating steak. So this is the one that you want to put the Montreal steak spice on, or we're going to do a simple marinade today. This, again, the fibers are a little bit more pronounced in this steak. It's going to be a little bit tougher. That's why you want to marinate it. You want to break it down a little bit. And also too, this is your least expensive to your most expensive.
Right, your most expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah, one thing I tell with my students is that the more an animal uses a specific muscle, the tougher it's going to be. So a nice easy way to remember that if it comes off one of the front legs or the hind legs, it's going to be a tougher cut. And if it comes out of one of the cuts through the middle of the animal, it's going to be a tenderer cut. So a nice easy way for kids to remember.
Okay, before we start cooking, I think we need a Waterloo Dark.
I thought you'd never ask.
Because when you're at the Cottage, you do need something to drink while you're, you work up a thirst.
It's very warm today.
So, so I'm going to get started. We're going to get started cooking. You're going to do some potato sides today for our steaks. And I'm going to start marinating our top sirloin. So do you want to, while I just get this going, do you want to start talking about some potatoes?
So, because the majority of what we're going to try to do today is going to be kind of barbecue orientated, I have some nice farmer's potatoes here that I'm going to do up in kind of a tin foil package here, and then just put it onto the barbecue. So to start, potatoes are washed. I'm just going to cube them up. The goal is to make sure that you have the potatoes, the chunks of the potatoes, relatively the same size, so they will all cook relatively at the same time.
So you got your cubes. What I've done here is just add a little bit of pepper, some dried onions. Now, dried onions versus, caramelized onions or just raw onions, I like it because usually I'm going to marinate this for 24 hours.
Right.
So then the marinade actually reconstitutes the onions, which gives it more flavor for your meat.
And that length of time that you marinate, because of the acids in the red wine, is going to help break down those tough fibers that you were talking about earlier, and then make a nice kind of tenderer product. All right, so potatoes are done.
Okay, perfect. So folks, whenever you go to use, red wine in any cooking dish, use the inexpensive red wine for cooking and drink the more expensive wine. I'm a firm believer in that. Or if you make your own, that's what I like using cooking wine for. So then we're going to take some low sodium, and you notice that I did not put any salt into my marinade because you have more than enough salt in the soy sauce.
Oh, for sure, yes.
So we're going to add, and if we're measuring, it's 2 cups of red wine and 1/4 cup of soya. You put it in a Ziploc bag, and we all have Ziploc bags, and I'm sure we have tons at the cottage, and so we're just going to seal this up, and I'm going to pop this in the fridge for 24 hours, and away we go.
Okay. All right, so potatoes are in. Depending on the amount, you might need to make a larger piece. One trick to make, if you want to, I've got 2 sheets here. You can buy, of course, a barbecue style tin foil that's a lot thicker for the barbecue, but if you have the regular house stuff that's thinner, just double it up. And you can make wider sheets by just taking the edges actually and folding them over, and then you can open up like a book and get yourself a wider package. But this should be fine. You can, of course, what we talked about, put fresh onion if you want, but we're going to use some dried onion today. So sprinkle the dried onion in.
I have a little bit of fresh garlic back here if you want to put.
That's good. A little knob of butter. If you're off of butter, you could use, of course, olive oil. You could use some avocado oil if you so choose to.
And coconut oil is really good with the potatoes as well.
Coconut oil would be another nice one, yes. A little fresh garlic. And if you don't have the fresh stuff, of course, go buy, by all means, use all of your dried stuff, which is a good way too of cooking foods. You don't have to always use the fresh stuff.
Exactly. And then you're coming across to we're on an island today, so everything that we came with. So if you forget something, you improvise, right?
So I'm just going to rip up some fresh sage. I'm not going to chop it, just rip it. You can actually use the stem if you want to. You don't have to just use the leaves, because you can just pull the stem out at the end. Of course, some pepper.
And don't forget with the stems, you get lots of the extra oils in the stem, so it actually gives you some more flavor.
A little bit of salt. And then you're just going to fold this up. I'm actually going to squish that in that way. I'm going to come this way. So kind of like how my mom used to wrap my sandwiches as a kid. Fold that over. And then take your edges, roll them in.
It's funny how stuff like that sticks with you, right?
And there you go. You have a package to go onto the barbecue full of potatoes.
Perfect. And then 350, medium high on your barbecue, which is about 450 degrees and probably about 25 minutes, and you're good to go.
Yeah. Again, depending on the thickness that you cut them, right? It's going to depend on how long they cook. Some suggestions would be, of course, indirect heat. So one side of your barbecue on, one side off. You could put them on your top rack, where I do find it's a bit hotter on the top rack because the heat does rise. So you're going to find they'll cook a little quicker up there. So there you go with that.
And as you're getting ready to make another potato dish, I have my corn dish here, and this is just a cheesy corn. And what? Try saying that. And what we've done is, again, coming to the island, you bring 2 dozen cobs of corn over versus the 1 dozen, so you have some extra in it. And as it sits, it gets a little bit tougher, and it might not be as nice for cobbed of corn. So just, again, peel the corn off. It's all raw. And then we have some cream. We've just warmed it up. I'm going to take some of your garlic from you over there.
Okay, yeah.
And then we're just going to put our cream into our other pan here. And this is an oven-safe pan, so that if you need to, when we're going to put it in the oven. So we're going to add a little bit of garlic, so probably about 1.5 cloves if we're keeping track. And then we're going to add our corn to it. smells like.
Do you want me to get you a little bit of cheese?
I do want you to get me a little bit of cheese.
Okay, so I'll just get you a little cheese. It's nice to have a little cheese, especially when you're at the cottage, because you never want to run out of cheese.
Yeah, no, you know, I'm glad we brought the small package. I think we're gonna there's nachos in our future. Yeah. So again, we're gonna take about 1 cup of cheddar cheese, grated cheddar cheese. Again, if you don't have the grated cheddar, you have Parmesan cheese, put this in, Gouda, wherever you want to go with it. This is just, you know, recipes are like roadmaps. There's 4 different ways to get to the cottage. There's 4 different ways to cook.
Yeah.
So we'll pop this back in the fridge.
Okay.
So then what I'm just going to put this back on the stove. We're just going to warm it up, let the cheese melt. And as you warm it up, it's probably going to take about 10 minutes and you have beautiful cheesy corn. And I'm just going to, I have some caramelized onions back here.
Okay.
Just want to put a little bit of that in with it. I'm
right.
stealing some of your onions, I know.
That's all right. And then I'll start the potatoes, Anna.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Now, what Steve's making, Chef Steve's making, is pommes de Anna, or potato Anna. And this recipe came from Escoffier. And Escoffier was the first rock star chef. He was the chef that wrote the menu for the Titanic, because in his day and age, that's, you know, everybody wanted Escoffier. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about Escoffier's recipes is they're tried and true. To this day, we're still using his cookbook in teaching and in just actually making things with it, and they work you know, absolutely fantastic. And he's the one that got everybody into the big hats, the uniform, the pants. He also put ventilation in kitchens, because years ago, back in the early 1900s, the average lifespan of a cook was 36 years because you breathed in all the fumes. Some of them were raging alcoholics because they didn't drink water back then. You drank wine, right? Yeah. So, you know, your lifespan as a cook was not long. Okay, so you're doing that. We've, again, just cut some potatoes on a mandolin, or you can use... You can use a knife, and I did show in another episode where if you're using anything round like a potato, if you want to cut them thin, always slice yourself a little flat spot. Put the potato on that, and that way you've got a nice level surface. Mm-hmm. The potato doesn't kind of roll around. Just less chance of cutting yourself. So I have some butter in. Mm-hmm. I'm actually going to put the little layer of potatoes in. Just kind of push that around. Some beautiful caramelized onions, and we just cook them off with a little bit of butter. Again, like Steve said, is if you don't have butter, don't want to use butter, olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil. Okay, and then I'm just going to layer these around. So basically, almost like scalloped potatoes without the cream sauce. Perfect. Put those around. I'm going to fill in the center. A little bit of parm. Yep. And we're just using the inexpensive parm that you can get at any grocery store. If you want, again, to take it up that next the next level, is, you know, buy some great Parmesan cheese and put that in taste, or grated Romano cheese, you know, that will even be fantastic. So for this one, I'm actually going to put in a little bit of rosemary. Oh, that's going to be so good. So I just, again, rip the leaves off and just put them in whole. I didn't need to chop them. So for my next layer, and a bit more of the caramelized onions. Spread those around. Perfect, and we're going to put another layer on. Yes. We're going to put this in the oven and finish it either in the oven at 350 or, again, medium high on the top rack or indirect heat on your barbecue, and you're good to go. When we come back, we're going to take you out to the barbecue. We're going to teach you how to cook some steaks, and we're going to make a really simple and easy demi-glaze that anybody can make. Beautiful.